Revenge of the Joker. The sound of laughing digs way too deep out of the subconscious. Deep inside the ideographic mind, countless pieces, every answer to every problem, every picture, everything he'd ever seen, heard, all became a brick, an endless brick of hope. But the laughing, that damn laughing, he should have known. It started so small in the distance. This is a problem. It grew, it got closer, it's getting louder. It will not stop. The children of Gotham have come to know this nightmare all too well. Thank goodness they don't know the truth of whose dream this is following. They would never sleep again until they themselves become someone else's nightmare. This was what the Joker loved most about his victims. This horrible laughing is the call of the devil. So, promise of being outside the door. Joker and Bruce are having the same dream. It's sending Bruce over the edge. All he wants to do is strangle that bastard. Show him who's boss, show him who's bigger, show him whose dream this is. It's always been the same. It ends with the screeching bat flying at his face and taking a bite. Bruce is getting stronger each night and begins to realize he's standing in blood. What happens? He wakes up. The picture of his family on the nightstand with no faces. He doesn't even notice it anymore. Most villains don't like to be seen. Some can't be looked at. And he does see himself as a villain. Chapter 2. Joanne rolled over to get a cigarette. In the rundown hotel room that deserves a smoke. Yes, the fat patron agreed. I do need a light. He stood up wearing only his white formal button-down t-shirt that was too big for him. Hey, tell me what you think of this, holding his left palm to his mouth. That's the Joker's tattoo, she said in a quiver, desperately scanning his eyes for cruelty. Are you a fan of his? She continued to his happy enough stare. Okay, then, how about this one, putting his right palm under the scariest eye she ever seen. She fell off the bed. There, tattooed on his hand, was the same crooked smile as the other hand, but it had a blue tongue hanging out of it. She gasped for air. Oh, so you are right, my dear. It does lose a bit of flair. The heavy man with brown hanging hair tore the sheet out from under her. She fell backwards to the floor. She found him facing away, dusting off the same hand that the face was on. I've been rather docile the last few months, dropping the sheets, jumping into a dainty little flopping his hands as he quickly squealed like a dolphin. His mind was stuck backwards, but her body wouldn't move, not an inch. He stopped and stood tall, looking downward. She looked on to the white streaks the sheets had revealed. that covered his face and hand. He bent down and pulled a knife out from under the mattress and tore off the sheets. This scared her the most. She had been a call girl for weeks and watched him tear his shirt off for the first time. Most heavy guys don't take their shirts off, so this isn't unusual. But when he threw the 80-pound fat suit off and pulled the brown stringy hair wig, revealing a neon green wig, the glow covered her face. The tattoos was maniacal. The thin Joker was standing in front of her, as dangerous as his tattoos beckoned. If you want to leave, be gone before I get out. In a surreal tone, Joker picked up his pink cell phone and speed dialed the number 2, then walked into the shower. By the time he got dressed, put on his jewelry, loaded the 6 knives into the holster that went down his chest, his plan was already in motion. He walked downstairs to be mauled by Harley Quinn, who had done a cartwheel flip into his arms, ecstatic from his call. She opened the door of the stolen police car that had all the glam of the Joker's tattoos spray painted all over it. She got into the front seat, turned on the sirens, and squealed out of the parking lot. By this time, Batman was still in year 2, a myth, still a shadow, still no Robin to help. Even his Batwave was limited to high-profile locations and security alarm monitors. More than enough once he gets his character profile network up and running. Bruce got dressed in under a minute. Pants, shirt, belt, gloves, boots, frame, cape. Hook shot above the Batmobile to land just as the cord recoiled. The Batmobile had an Indy-class engine and chassis, perfect for weaving through the tight cornered roads leading out of the Batcave catacombs and through the high-speed, high-crowded city of Gotham. He flipped through the streets. He adjusted steering on his holographic trajectory map steering wheel. It was like playing a video game. He can watch a 3-time view as he sits in the center and watches red light, green lights on everything that's moving around him, so he can see the probability senses. It's a probability sensor. It tracks the likeliness of getting which direction they're going to be moving. The Batwave was always being watched by Alfred. Sir, 5 alarms have just gone off, and a Joker sighting has been seen over the police band. He found the opening and squealed to the Joker. At this moment, there were 50 clown masks circling the city, kidnapping anyone, man, woman, and child. It didn't matter. Anyone who was alone. Nobody expected these unimpressionable vehicles to be doing anything. But that's what the city was. Don't look, don't tell. They're too busy to hear it anyway. They have lives to maintain, and will cry when it happens to them. Maybe they'll get something out of it. The city always does. Batman never found the Joker that night, and as he broke through the bones of the criminals he did pass, in the shadows. He continued installing the Batwave cameras. This was his trump card, but not easy. Luckily, his ninja skills were highly, and he wasn't exactly known yet. The idea of a big bat flying through the only affects so many people that looked at the stars. So he waited, he was patient, and he found places to set it up. He wanted the whole city to be locked down so that every square inch was followed. Deep inside the Joker's alley kingdom, he took off his shirt, his vest, his weapons, and walked into the flickering light. All the clowns walked up in line. Harley grinned with the anticipation that would make most people explode. One after the next, Joker tore into him. One after the next, he broke down the line. He was a Golden Globe boxer, and he beats the shit out of everyone. By the time he was sweating, he moved back. His hair had only moved so slightly, an easy fix. Now, feeling satisfied, he sat down on his throne, listening to the claps of the fighters, inhaling the perfume of their sweat. He could smell the blood thicken. Enough. Bring out the entertainment. The group stopped fighting, stepped back, and tossed a young woman into the light. She couldn't make out a word that was said. All she could see was his eyes peering through the darkness. Until dog, cock, snake, or ants, the gang cheered the answer as the white hand found the ear next to the devil eyes. Their decision was to be her fate. If she loses this fight, it will be the thing that takes her life. The sun rose over Gotham, and Bruce had finally got to sleep after hours of rolling in bed. His nights are long. He finds clues for 15 separate crimes. Are they on purpose? Are they toying with me? It feeds the bat, but it eats the mind. Only his bat wave soothes his consciousness and allows him to rest. It was a brilliant idea, hiding the signal through dozens of half-second frequency changes, only readable by someone who knows the frequency and timing. Computers made this easy, so long as you know what channel to start, what time it is. Then, as you're talking, for every half second, it jumps and goes to the next one, and then jumps again. It's basically like putting a letter in a paper shredder that not only cuts downwards, but sideways. So by the end, anybody trying to put the pieces together are only seeing letters. All that was missing was ghost signals with false conversations happening that changed the entire premise of what he might be talking about. It's completely unhackable, completely unlocatable. It was the perfect system. The sun was burning hot as the Joker walked down. The sound in the basement of his footsteps echoed. All the kidnapped victims from yesterday were hanging in a chain. Well, well, well. What a lucky day we have. Look at you all, so important to the city. Not your city, of course, but my city. Today is the most important day of your lives. Today, you're going to find out how you're needed the most. I don't know if any of you heard of me. I don't watch TV, you see. and I'm sure you understand what time we do have. This city life, I know you all know it all too well, the savage it can be, stealing your time, stealing your days. The chains quivered in fear, the tears burned like acids down their cheeks. Today is a special day. I don't like to go without, and even though I hate money so much, occasionally I need it too. This is what the beast requires, or our dreams will never come true. And I don't like to know, but I'm gonna let you eat me. So today, the day, or maybe tomorrow, he hesitates, turning quickly to the left and over his left hand over his mouth, laughing. The one without the tongue, the left hand. Are you destined to be soup or TNT? Oh, you're so important to me. The city loves my soap so bad. They just can't get enough. 150 people equal 250 bars of soap, giving about $4,000. But not so much nitroglycerin as we'd like so. So you see, hoping into a standing upright pose, head held high as if he catched the ball peen hammer to his chest. Today, we're gonna help make the city clean or erase it. Boys, he screeched, stepping to the side, allowing the two huge goons wearing clown masks to walk down the stairs carrying a spin wheel. On it was the word soup and a tiny sliver named TNT. Bruce turned deep into his sleep. The laughing was so loud. Bodies were everywhere, the smell of blood so thick he threw up all over his bed. The laugh, that laughing, from the darkness, it was from everywhere. He left his body so desperate to escape, just to try to shut it up, to get away, to get to where it wasn't. He would never be allowed to sleep if he doesn't stop this damn noise. He floated over the bloody darkness, feeling his feet squish through the meat that was far below on the floor. The screeching bat, thank goodness. Just a bite and it's over. The bat appeared, flying straight at him. There his parents were, hiding behind the bat wings. The wings covered their faces, each one behind the other. The monster grew. The world spun, spinning everything around like it was falling through a sinkhole or a drain. Bang, bang! He was in the alley. His parents were on the ground. He still can't see their face. All he wants to do is see his parents' face, and it's been gone since it happened. This one moment that forever is in his mind was the last time he had ever seen his parents' face. He doesn't even remember the orchestra. He hears footsteps running away. Once again, he's an adult. He turns to chase it, awakes mid-run, and runs straight off the side of his bed. His parents' faces were still gone on the nightstand next to him. It didn't even bother him anymore. The clock says 6 p.m. He rinses his face. It's been so long. He pressed the button next to the light switch. Alfred, I'll need food. Bring it down to the cave. I'm going home. And released the button. Bruce spent most of his time since his childhood in the cave. The mining contracts he set up in Switzerland had given him all he needed to construct this excellent cave network. He owns the mines, the miners, the accountants, the boats, so it was easy to modify a loading dock into the bottom of the barge, allowing him to load material into his submarine without anybody ever knowing it happened. He would cast mold all the iron for the Batcave platforms himself using cement and the raw materials, heat them up, and then move them into position. This was how he spent his teens. Despite what everybody says, he was a very productive child, but all they noticed was the newscasts. Delinquent orphan Bruce Wayne, in trouble again, hanging out with a bad crowd. Who's looking out for his welfare? Is homeschool really what this boy needs? They never ended, but it put Bruce right in the position he wanted to be, right in the underworld. He wanted to learn them, know them before they become the monster, wanted to understand them. And watching a TV report, he noticed it, and it changed him. He's seen somebody take a drop of blood and taste it and know what blood it came from. He was like the discipline you have to know that much about blood, to have an entire repertoire categorized inside of you to know its taste. Sherlock Holmes did the same thing. He's done everything until he was high on it, so that when he walks into a room and everybody else smells putrefied death, he can break through it and smell the formaldehyde, getting the drunk feeling and all the other chemicals that are in the room. He knows them all. There was a man in Asia that categorized a pill set. The first herbatologist on the planet went around tasting all of the different plants, licking it first, taking a bite, spitting it out next, writing down all of the reactions he needed, sometimes being poisoned for 2 weeks, but he never stopped. He kept powering through. This would be the Batman's resolve. This is what that bat would give him the most. The bats. They haunted his nightmare for his whole life. And only until he started using them did they subside and fall back into the darkness, hanging on the roof in the distance. After his parents' funeral, he ran. He ran for days. He was running back home to hide in his room when the old floorboard gave out in the middle of the woods. The floor was covering up an old well shaft. He fell through and knocked out. He woke up as the bats were swarming him, fighting by. He looked through the mouth of the cave. It looked like it wanted to eat him. The bats were gone, but the sound was still there, taunting him from deep inside these fanged jaws of this cave. That was years ago. And now he would become more. He would save his parents. He remembers his father always warning him about a story of the owls, a group of monsters that go arise to destroy all the criminals and the monsters that tell his name and tell of them. He convinced himself that his father was killed by them for using his name. So he started to go out during the day when the kids would be at school, hiding from bush to bush, looking through windows, trying to find clues, breaking into houses. He would find these owls that killed his father. Truant officers, police officers. He ran from everyone, and nobody ever caught him. He was a self-made little ninja of the daytime. As he got to the realization that this was not going to save him, he decided that cave, he would have to overcome his fears. The bats were getting too loud. So he went down into the cave mouth. Over the next 5, 6 years, he studied those caves, even began having Alfred go around paying the smartest specialists in their field to record cassette tapes under the notion that the delinquent Bruce would need something to fall back on. Alfred paid so much they nearly forgot it even happened, because once you burn through a big chunk of money, you wish it never existed. This was how it was years ago. Bruce climbing through caves of darkness, studying cassettes. He learned everything. By the age of 16, he would have had 80 degrees, 80 college degrees. But this wasn't caring for his welfare. And the news reports still came in. Homeschooled monster. Wayne arrested with ties to local gang members. Has Wayne Manor fallen to drugs, whores, and violence? By the age of 16, Bruce decided to swim across the Atlantic Ocean. He dropped out of school to set himself on growth, the growth he needed. The Bat Cave was close enough, and he didn't want to add too much before he knew what to do with it. So, just like how a backpacker will go across Europe after college, he decided, I'll cross the world. Something was missing. He held their ties. They held his secret. For this notion was inside. He felt like a little bird, lost, endlessly wandering, only searching for food. It took 2 weeks to cross the Atlantic. On the other side, he passed out in a coma for a week. He woke up starving. He had no hope. He didn't know. He realized that animals will only eat what they want when they want. He couldn't do anything about it. He was helpless. He came to the realization that he needed Alfred and broke his vow. Alfred, I need more cassettes. I need to know everything. I need to know every kind of food that every animal eats. If I want salmon, I want to know where to get it and how to fish for it, what bait it needs. I can never have this happen again. I cannot be in the middle of a situation and fail. He watched a little robin land and eat out of the palm. He caught it. Finally, he had something to eat, and he would not be a little robin that only cares for food. He would be the bat. Yes, sir. I will get on it. But I was thinking that we need to take this a step further. With the changing of cassettes, you will need to meet me at checkpoints. I ask, sir, that you try to avoid me. Do not let me catch you beforehand. This will help quicken your pace. I see what you're doing. Remember, I am a retired MI6 operative. And if you want to succeed, you cannot. This is not a field trip. This is not a sightseeing thing. You're here to win. Bruce thought a lot to himself as he walked. He was strong from the cast molding and building his platforms high in the back catacombs, usually 50 to 500 feet above the floor, so even if you're on the ground, you won't see him. He was trying to build a repertoire to govern himself. What was a man? Can a man defeat an athlete? Can a sports athlete defeat a polyathlete? Poly, as in polycentric, or posi, as in posimatric, or positronic. These sat heavy on him. These classes, people will support a football star so heavily. But can a football star who takes on nothing but grown men work out all day defeat a mountain climber who does nothing but climb up the one mountain? He would have to be to the mountain climber what the mountain climber is to the sports star. He would have to be even further. The sports star can get the food. His calves and thighs burnt with the knowledge. His fingers and toes screamed with the understanding. He was the fastest mountain climber in the world. He was. He spent his whole childhood climbing those caves. His fingers and toes know those tears more than anyone ever has. He even free climbs it now. Not because he knows he can slide down and how to slide down and be able to catch it. His fingers and toes are waiting for it. He was well trained. But a polyathlete is more. A polyathlete trains for everything and completes everything. He overcomes the rapids. He overcomes the mountain. He overcomes the distance. So he set up the vision quest and broke his resolve and powered through. He would cross Europe. There was a war. He ended up being recruited as a nursemaid, helping the doctors at the MASH units fix the sick, stitching, antibiotics, antiseptics, cleaning them off, everything the helper would need, as he studied vigorously as many of the doctors as he could, their procedures, their diagnosis. The doctors appreciated it. The cassette tapes had taught him many languages, and as such, by telling him what they were doing and why, it helped them keep it in mind, like the cassette tapes took over his father's voice inside him. He was proud of being a little Robin right now, proud of the food he had. He was going to be Batman. It's more than a rat. Whatever he needs. Afterwards, he would travel down the Alps towards India, the Himalayas, always 100 miles from each checkpoint to get the new cassettes from Alfred. he began a skewed course, not always necessarily the hardest path, that being the obvious one and too easy to be noticed. But Alfred never did catch him. He was always waiting at the place when Alfred arrived. Alfred was pleased. This time, though, right between the Alps and Himalayas, he found Bruce sitting there looking at the mountains. The look on his face was as if he was looking over a mirror of his whole life. This endless mountain range that when you're in the middle of and standing on top, you see nothing but millions of mountains around you. He was lost. Sir, let me tell you, and Bruce interrupted. Do you think I can? Is this just a fool's errand? Am I... You're in the middle of the storm, sir. I have read the case files and even had the company of meeting a few double O agents in my time with the British intelligence. And if they were to ask me what you were doing, I would be ashamed of myself. These people do not fail. These people pride themselves on being preset. These people are the best. They don't use bullets or the bare minimum. A gun is like a tool. It's used to open locks more than to erase people. The MI6 operatives are those cleaners to get in and get out without anybody seeing. The double O is the information users, the deciders, the finders, the holders. I think you are more than they have ever been. That they, to you, seem like sports stars. That they seem like actors. They seem like grown men deciding finally that their time of play is over and it's time to get seriously into the video game. Sir, I have watched you grown up over the years. I have watched you use drugs just to build tolerances so that if you ever do get caught and they poison you or drug you, they will not affect you so much. This is your situation. I know you hurt. How could you not? This is what a man you are. He would only know what you want him to know. He decided that this was going to be it. Alfred decided he was going to tell him what he wasn't sure if he would, what he was hoping he wouldn't have to, what he was hoping would be years into later. But that was the same, that's what he was just talking about. Do it early. Sir, if the weight is too heavy on you and the pain is too much, go to India, find the Bagirs of Masara. If they find you worthy, which I know you are, because I know the man who told me about it, if they find you worthy, they will teach you how to overcome pain. They will teach you the strength that you seek desperately. Now, his trip to India might not have gone to plan. They might not have wanted him. She might not have wanted him, but she did train him, and he was grateful. Maybe if he had stayed years later, he wouldn't be crawling up the sewer with the gash in his side. Maybe if he would have stayed and listened to her rules, he would have learned the pain of the knife, learned how to overcome it as well as much of the other things. He was a fast learner and was never much on listening. So he left. He thanked her. She was one of his strongest allies. She made him the machine that wasn't afraid of pain. The word of the outside traveled fast. The word of the outsider traveled fast. These were the days before cell phones, before pagers. These were the age where you're most likely to be told on by a letter than a phone call. His American reputation had crossed continents and found the ear of a man named Ra's al Ghul. He was a mercenary. He was the head of he was the head of the 9 ninja clans, the League of Assassins. He hated technology and would only work by ear. Even when letters were sent, he prided himself on building an organization so strong that they would have all the information waiting without having to wait on the letter. So young Mr. Wayne is crawling out of the shadow of his parents' death. I wonder how far he'll climb. Ra's al Ghul was seemingly immortal. He'd lived for 600 years. The days with the League of Assassins were brutal. Pain is all they know. When they arrive, they're given a white suit, a white ninja suit, and they are taught that failure means pain. Failure means no noise, no scene, to disappear in the daylight. He thought back to when he was a kid. He put everything into it. This was such an unexpected gift. The pain disappeared. The Ra's al Ghul was amazed at the potential in this child, and so they trained. Bruce watched the white suits around him turn red. They were never allowed to take the suits off. They were never allowed to know each other, who they were, what rank they were. They all did the same training. They learned weapon and silence. They learned blindfold and pain. Bruce made his way up the League of Assassins. Then he was given the black suit, the ninja suit, the title of job. There were 3 types: ninja, spy, assassin. The ninjas collect children, the kidnapped victims, to live and join the Brotherhood. Nobody's seen Bruce as their brother. He was an outsider again. He was not kidnapped. He was too old. And they wait their whole lives to move up into one of the positions. Only the 9 heads know the final secret to the title of true ninja. They are the only ones. Everyone else even they are kidnapped victims, and they too will be slaughtered if they turn traitor. After this, after the kidnappers, there's you either collect the collectors, collect the children, collect the black sand. The assassins kill and pull out the kill the people who were given the black sands, and the spies watch the area and hold reinforcements over the team. They were a solidified unit. When they come up against a rock, they don't climb the rock, they climb each other until the last one can hold down and the bottom starts to climb up. They were one. They were quiet. They would rather walk across a bookshelf full of glass and never make a noise. They're taught to kill the target in the center of a million guards before you ever even start killing the guards if it's necessary at all. They were there for the slaughter, for the hope of advancement. And Ra's al Ghul betrayed it. He overturned Deathstroke's claim for fame to Bruce. He wanted Bruce to become his successor. This was Ra's al Ghul's first mistake in his 600 years, and would eventually cause his downfall. Both Bruce and Slade turned traitor, and in sight of their skill sets, and the fact that both were planning their own separate escapes, unknown to anyone, the League was completely unprepared. Not as though they cared much. This opened two places to be filled. Two heads, two white cloaks or white suits to go back on, to learn how to disappear in the daytime and become a true ninja. Alfred spoke up, taking Bruce out of this dream, out of this place. 1,000 years just passed. He was standing in front of his punching bags, 4 broken brick bags, filled 800 pounds each. "Sir, the meal's on the table." He felt like he traveled his whole trip again, for the first time since he arrived back. He was on the beach in Europe again, waking up from his coma starving. He felt defeated. He built the bat cave to build his strength. Every platform separated from the next. Even any ladder was on the outside of the railing, so you would have to crawl out over the railing just to get to the stairs. And somehow in the middle of this daydream, he had got to the farthest one without his bat belt. "Shit," he spoke lightly. Years ago he had realized the grapples would destroy the city, and eventually found a reversible X-ray machine, in essence a tractor beam. He had 6 on his belt and 2 on his gloves. Absolutely pointless right now. Bruce, feeling overwhelmed, passed out and fell to the floor. Alfred grabbed the gloves and the bat belt and got over to him. Bruce built tractor beams into the glove fingers and boot toes to help him climb the mountain. He knew that age would eventually get to him. "Little girl!" And in turn, you could sweep the button over and reverse the frequency back to X-ray. Alfred got there and realized he was not Bruce Wayne. He switched it over to X-ray and realized the eyepiece was in the mask, way back over near the Batwave at the entrance, near the entrance. This was the worst time for Batman to take a holiday. There seemed to be a polar shift, some eclipse that was throwing all the bad guys loopy. Alfred couldn't find anything wrong with Batman. Looking through him, giving him an examination. Maybe he's affected by it too. The Batwave was going off so much he couldn't think straight. Alfred was losing his mind. He wanted to find a mute button or unplug it. Sewer workers had spotted Killer Croc. More people were missing over the police bands, and on and on and on. He knew how badly Batman was needed. He might be the only thing that could stop this endless crime rate. This was no coincidence. Killer Croc had been busy on a rampage of increasing his power, his presence. He would be what he was born to be. He would never forget the look on Harley's eyes during the Weapon X mission. She was so enthralled by Diablo at the bar, his strength, his need, his himness. He would find his own. He would show the world that he too has the devil's gift, even if he has to build it himself. He already looked like a Croc. He just had to throw away the human. The smell of burning flesh had been creeping through the sewer system under Gotham for a week, and he dredged along the way, far out of his usual stomping grounds. He quietly found the clown through a crack. He looked in. They were all at tables over big buckets, 50-gallon buckets, putting people. Wow, it was pretty disgusting. They were in there building their arsenal. He noticed pounds of TNT stacked up. It isn't nice to stare at monsters. A voice of love, of darkness, came from the shadows behind him. Croc didn't like being followed, and turned to find a monster coming out of the shadows. It was a blue-haired clown with huge red pants with white polka dots and red shoes. It placed its katana against the wall in the dry spot on the sewer and pulled his suspenders off, letting his pants fall onto the dry spot next to it. His hair was tied back in 3 lines, 2 along the sides and 1 back. This was not a nice clown. Croc watched him crack his knuckles through the black leather gloves he was wearing. So, the clown uses guards? That's interesting. And the clown said no. Hours later, Killer Croc fumbled his way out of the sewers onto the busy streets. It's all he could do to save his life. Batman visited him and entered at the critical unit ward in Arkham Asylum. He was nearly bludgeoned to death before the blades were brought into it. Blades? Yeah, at least 3 or 4 separate ones. Batman walked out to the Batmobile and began looking for junction points inside the sewer system that the Joker would use as points of interest. It was odd that the clown only used weapons that would mark his calling card. I hope he's not taking this more complicated. The Joker, on the other hand, had no idea the bat was pushed in his direction. He always seemed to show up at the worst times anyway. But when Batman does walk into this, he still doesn't know the nightmare he's found. The Bat is a very particular fighting style. He flips, he rolls from shadow to shadow, bad guy to bad guy, wall to wall, ceiling to floor to ceiling to wall. Always attacking, always moving, hook-shotting, using the three on his belt at three different spots to always move him. Even learned to use the hook shots to turn corners and to slingshot them. Sometimes even using them to the slingshot to punching people in the face. He hid in the darkness. The Joker watched his men getting pummeled. He hated the Batman. Boomerangs flew by, hitting the lights so he could move, not even to that spot, just to open another spot on the field. He used smoke bombs and appeared in front of people, punching them in the face. Man, I hate rodents. Why does he have such great toys? But that was irrelevant. His clowns were nothing to him, and he was a beast. He was This was like fighting an illusion. His hand-picked men fell so easily. Weeks of and nothing. No, he himself fell just as easily as they did to that fucking bat, who dropped on him from the sky. Ah! He screamed, silent and alone. How much he hated that fucking bat. The bone breaker. The insolent little shit who says, I don't need to call the police. I'll even fucking heal you if the ambulance is too far away. Ah! You, you, you who are just like my father. So self-absorbed, so strong. The happy birthday clown with a million fake IDs. And a cute, lovable, darling little boy Joker, just dressed up like a dancing chimp. You would have just dropped him off and ran, wouldn't you? He thought to himself, saying quietly. Batman could barely hear it. Don't you know how long it took me to find out? How long? Snarling in the bat's face. Batman said, what? But the Joker was lost. He fell into the psyche of his eidetic mind. He fell into a whole other world, another dimension of the past, lost to the dad's overbearing snare, tied, trapped. His father used to bring gifts home, and he began to notice there were trinkets and things from the house they were at earlier that day. He grew to realize that his father would sneak out at night and come back the same night, the same fucking night as their birthday. He sat in silence and remembered everything. He remembered his father, the IDs, the countless hours alone in the cave as his father was out. Then one day he made the mistake to ask, so where are the gifts coming from? I know you stole them. Why would they just give you this stuff? You good for nothing little shit. The lost boy was beaten to sleep more often than he was awake. He became his punching tool. His father's brain was torn. He hated this little bastard. This child. All he ever knew was pain. All he ever knew was suffering. And now the shit stained from his loins sat there and taunted him, tied to him. This unflinching, uncaring. His father had to start tying him to the wall as he went out to mutilate the poor family on their birthday. One day the father was drunk again and took a few shots at the boy. He decided to leave him up there for days. He didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't care. Bastard never flinches, never squirrels, never agony. The bastard never shows any pain. It infuriated him more than anything. This time, right as he was thinking, this boy spits in my face. And Joker actually spit in his face. It was so perfect. A complete coincidental time shift of 2 points. The father beat the dog piss out of him. Joker, over the years, had realized that he doesn't even sleep. He would sit there awake and his body was dead. The damage was done. He sat there. He felt that. It wasn't even a loogie. He was lost in awe, unable to awake his body. The boy came to realize the greatest gift of his life. He had no nervous system. He can't feel pain or touch or the wind on his face. Then the noise caught his ear, a noise he's only heard a few times in his life. His father was snoring. His father never sleeps. This was the moment, the day of all days. If he could only wake up. He broke both of his hands, getting him out of the restraints that day. He would do it. He would use his gifts to fix the world. He grabbed a knife, and I'll start with him. He stood over his father, asleep on the floor, and knelt down on him like he was riding him. The laugh was born that day as he crushed the knife into his unexpected father. I need a better Joker laugh. It could have lasted forever. You could almost say that he felt joy from it. His eidetic memory is so unfocused that this was so off his usual train that it just erased everything. The most important stuff of his life was hidden around this memory, but all he remembered was the beginning. He studied every book in the library. He got smart. He got strong. He came to realize how much he looked like his father and even gained his ID collection. Then, to add insult to injury, the gangs broke into Arkham at the cusp of him remembering the thing he needed. See, back then, he was going around killing mobsters and gangsters, building a god reputation as an avant-garde killer. Him and a buddy did their jobs well and enjoyed it very much. When a shadow moved past his eyes while he was looking up at the sky, he ran as fast as it moved, turning the corner, and witnessed a man being tossed off a second-story balcony as another man was getting his thigh broken by the shadow. He lowered, watching it intently as the shadow threw the other guy to the ground using a rope. The Joker had forgotten this moment because it was the symptom that brought his father back to life. He sat there the whole time, and the shadow jumped behind to the ground with them, just like it was a stairwell. He followed that shadow. He followed it for weeks. He followed it step by step and found it at the city edge. There, he stepped it back all the way. He had to go to the city borders, the city and found that the property was owned by the billionaire drug addict Bruce Wayne. The Batman would have gone limp. He would have gone limp like all the bat branding he does, giving all the bad guys he comes up against a Batman limp. He was too fixated. The Joker became obsessed, an obsession that lasted years to follow him. For the kid in the newspaper, he couldn't believe it. And just like that day, the pursuit was buried for almost indefinitely. He built a gang so terrible the Bat would have no choice but to start killing them. He needed the Bat to kill him. He needed him to help him save the world. The Joker was going to be a true superhero, not so this vigilante could go around and save them. More and more he built, falling deeper into the psychosis, falling deeper into the madness. There's an entire season of The Return of the Joker, the Teen Titans Joker, that tells of his teen years, his years of Joker, the superhero. But time passed, the war continued, and his mass of victims began putting on their own war paint. The war against Batman began. Endless people, all hating him for not killing that madman, for always letting the Joker go free. How could they not? How could he not kill them? The Jokers were everywhere. They were the waiters. They were the bus boys. They were your brother. Nobody could know who they were. Joker was free again, and Harley Quinzel was his greatest minion. She could just sleep with the security company that was currently watching Arkham, and with a little persuasion reminder of how her buddies and the Joker's buddies are always at the back door. Then, of course, the matter of, if you ever told what'll happen to your family, does that register? If the Bat knew, if the Bat knew the gang wore their nature so blindly, so wholeheartedly, when even the mission to put them for, they were the clowns, they were Joker's clowns, but he was the only clown, or so they thought. What they didn't realize was the clown had found himself a worse monster than he was. For all the dozens of victims that blamed Batman for their loss, this one wouldn't stand for it. He watched the clown from the shadows, from the rooftops. He's seen the obsession, recognized it literally. There was obsession. He was obsessed with the Bat. He learned how to use his men as sacrificial lambs. That conniving shit stain, the bad clown thought to himself. But in the midst of all the diversity, he postulated the perfect ploy. He knew just what to do. The night was unusual cold for this time of year. He got into a home, and the next day the police arrived. After nobody who lived there could be found. Inside, the police found the family tied to chairs, facing a makeshift stage with a big smiley face drawn on the wall. The police came to realize that all the faces of the bound family had smiles burnt into them. One big happy family. This was a year ago, and the monster had framed the Joker many times. He would not stop until the Joker was killed or in prison for the rest of his life. Batman got the bat signal call to the top of Gotham Police Station. The new chief of police had some unusual news put on his desk. Killer Croc regained consciousness and wanted to talk to the Bat. Batman arrived at the asylum at 2 a.m. The night shift is never as on call as day shift, and he preferred this because at least the last thing he needed was to be known as using rats to gain information. He crept through the vent system as only a ninja can, arrived at the control room, then using binoculars found what cell Croc was in. He used his hook shots to grapple across the ceiling. When you have a 500-foot cord, a bridge wire, you're able to shoot it and shoot the next one early enough that you never move closer to the wall and it appears that you're flying. The last one he hooked directly over the door and lowered himself down upside down to the window and then tapped on it lightly. "What do you want, Croc?" Croc walked up to the bulletproof glass. He was back in his usual form. He spoke rather quietly. Apparently he wasn't into being known as a rat either. It wasn't the clown, or at least not one of the Joker's clowns. He was more dangerous. I think he's hunting you and your little buddy. Croc moved away from the door and stood in the corner, which happened to be his typical sleeping position. The Bat made his way out as fast as he got in. He got out of the building and called Alfred, and Klein got to the roof, and using his squirrel suit under the cape, he jumped off for close proximity jumps. "I need you to take a closer look at Joker's crimes and victims. I want to know his signature and when it began to change." Alfred learned that your Joker file was by far the largest. The Joker was a nobody. Alfred read the case file and had the beast from the never-ending story enter his mind. The nothing. The wolf was bad, and it consumes everything. But even it was consumed by the nothing. He cringed with all the similarities. Alfred put it all into the second timeline in his mind. Although the crime rate had dropped since Batman's arrival in Gotham, but with the appearance of the Joker, the age of supervillains began. Was this better, he wondered? Large crimes sparingly versus multiple crimes everywhere? He finished the analysis and called Batman. "1 second, Alfred." Alfred could hear the random bad guys catching ass. "Go ahead," as he began tying them up, standing and breaking their thighs. "You know, eventually they will have to amputate," he told them, talking to the man who's had his leg broken in the same spot 4 times already, and came to the conclusion. Alfred had come to the conclusion that the Smiley Face Theater, up until then, he had always left calls to the police. Gordon himself gave you this information. It wasn't in any reports. After that, he went back to calling them. Joker didn't call the police on this one. All in all, 5 crimes in the last year that were reported as the Joker did not get calls to the police. I'll send you the information in the Batmobile. Batman returned to his computer screen. by clicking the button on his bat belt. The Batmobile roof opened, and he hook shotted it so that he could land inside the roof. Then it closed. The Batman turned on his computer screen and looked over the statistics. A year. All the most gruesome ones. I had thought he had upped his game, but the remaining crimes perfectly fit into his character profile. How could I have been so blinded? This wasn't the same man. Obsession, sir. What? You had overlooked him. He turned into a maniacal madman. Overlooking his files, I realized he was increasing ever since he fell into the toxin. He increased. In the beginning, he was a self-mutilator, through physically and mentally. At first, he was a bludgeoner. But after around the time Dr. Quinzel had changed to pale white, like the Joker, apparently jumping into the pale herself, the Joker had changed again into a carver. It was likely essentially to assume that he had turned the wheel again. The theater thing was always turned your stomach. Okay, Alfred, I'm going back on patrol. Take the wheel. Yes, sir. But be aware, I will be putting the shortcut driveways onto the front of the line on your desk. Right. I do need to remember to design the construction robots. Alfred turned the remote control holographic pad that sits basically next to the Batwave computer system. It was a steering wheel that was a lot like the Batmobiles with the hologram in the center. This allows anyone, even the most inept drivers, to be able to drive any scenario at high velocity with zero damage and casualties. Alfred had realized a while ago that a solo car entrance that far away from the city wasn't great for split-second decision reversals, let alone any emergency situations. If things went south, on a good day his ETA was 15 minutes from the cave, and that's hard enough while driving two machines, one getting the Batmobile out of sight, and second sending air support that can pick up a disabled body. Bruce had a bad habit of feeling invincible. Alfred didn't have the luxury. So 5 years ago he began monitoring the catacombs for any unwanted human activity, and in the past 5 years there was zero, and it gave him enough time to build a 3D map of the entire infrastructure. He found the closest path to the cities, places that could be bought by Wayne Industries, and then with a few alleyway modifications construct a system of driveways, basically closing the connection points into natural dead ends, giving the paths themselves a smooth channel, as anybody who's not inside the channel would never realize there was anything there but Earth. How he envied the future. How he wanted it so bad to be accessible to him, since he drives the Bat vehicles more than Batman does. Thank goodness got off the optimism. As Alfred said, Bruce double tapped the switch again, and the ceiling opened. Batman hook shot to the roof of the closest building and leaped off. He used the hook shot of himself. The hook shots are 500-foot bridge cables wrapped around with the tractor beam tips. Each little tip, when turned on, activates an area of 340 square inches, roughly the size of a Rubik's Cube. The tractor beams themselves activate, occupy at 60 pounds per square inch. So once it hooks onto the wall and activates the Rubik's Cube size square, that full cube will hold 20,400 pounds of payload. He got to the top of the roof and leaped off, pulling on the cords under his shoulders, turning the cape into a hang glider. His cape was made of fireproof black leather. It was more than enough to hold him for long proximity jumps. He soared across the dark landscape. This was the only place in Gotham that seemed quiet and full of and completely at peace until another attack. He pulls the release wires up from above his shoulders, turning the hang glider back into the cape, and began falling to earth like a ball. Batman knew at the start of this, while climbing the catacombs as a kid, that he would need more than good luck, especially in this on-the-dime scenario. So he came up with a crash shield, a titanium frame he wears over his suit, over the squirrel suit, but under the bat cape. This consists of two titanium rods that are connected by his back and move down to his hands and feet that have huge rails, so that so long as he's aiming down and lands on his hands and feet, the bungee cords will hold him as the things take the impact. This was only in worst case scenarios, and he preferred not to use it. So he used the hook shot on his belt and climbed to the wall quietly, using 3 at a time most of the time, and jumped back and forth between walls. He always preferred to climb up the walls, but down, it's better to just use the rope and rappel. The shape of this frame on him helped allude to the fact of whether he was human or a monster by stealing the human image away with the cape opened. He definitely didn't look like a human, even when he was hook-shotting to the wall. The attacker was never aware his jury had fell from the sky, but was ready for the bat. A dozen guys jumped out with guns. Batman grabbed the victim and reactivated the switch of the hook shot. It's a turn knob, a dimmer switch that showed the farther it pulls. It's designed to pull the higher the speed increases, and then the knob that sides up, down, in, out, or neutral. He quickly got him to the roof and headed back down to finish off the men. He hook-shot himself through 3, grabbed the 4th, and threw them into the next 3. The guns went off a few times, but they were only shooting at shadows and never know if they were actually hitting him. Batman had cameras on his body. The reason his mask seems so puffed out off of his face isn't to disguise what he looks like personally, even though it does help. But he has like rear view mirrors of a car on him with two 64-bit cameras that allow for nearly crystal clear images of what's coming up behind him. This is what gave him his signature backwards hand punch without looking. He could see if they had a bat or a knife or a gun, and could always jump out of the way. This one, unfortunately, was unarmed, and he used his signature backhand punch. He had not skipped a beat, and he never stops moving, flipping and rolling out of the way, in front and behind the bad guys. He tapped his belt on both sides. One dispensed 2 gummy packets. One he slammed into the barrel of the gun, and the second, he tapped it twice to get the one for the gun. He tapped it once and threw it at the guy's face. When he got far enough away, he rolled back into the shadow and clicked the top of the dispenser, as the bottom button is the one that releases. The top, he clicked it twice, and the one in the gun exploded, blowing out of the guy's hand. He screamed and fell to the ground. He was out for a while. The gum has 3 settings. One is breathable. They're all breathable, but one is made for sticking people's hands together, face, anything to keep them occupied. The double tap makes it electrified, and the third becomes explosive. Oh, that's right, he electrocuted him and dropped it out of his hand. The pain sent him out of the fight quickly as he hook shot of the way, grouping into the shadows of another shadow. Nobody even knew which one he landed in. He did this to all the bad guys. The first law of ninja is to collect your pieces. He clicked the long pack on his batarang, at his bat belt, releasing 3 batarangs. He decided to use the ones, since these guys were dangerous, but they were not professional. He didn't need a specialized one. He has 2 different kinds of batarangs, both the same size, around 3.5 inches each. The regular ones are just batarangs. You throw them, they either stab or fly around and come back like a boomerang. The second ones are designed the exact same way, except in the center he's able to put a tablet, like a pill in. And depending on how he clicks the dispenser, determines which one comes out, using small explosive, electric, or high explosive. Each one, regardless of either reusable, refillable, or just reusable, all have GPS microphone units onto them. So not only can he track them, but he can listen to everything around them. They're his favorite toy. He's learned to use them very well. But when dealing with morons, they never stay in the right place, and they're very sharp. People have a tendency to get cut, and occasionally have a bad habit of returning to him covered in blood. This complicates his timetable. He doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to be known. He doesn't want the legend to become reality. He finished off the goons fast and got to work, swiping his shoulder unit, changing the tractor beams on his fingers into x-rays. Then, using the mask, went over all the cuts on the guys that seemed to be in bad spots so that he could see the damage. He was completely surgical proficient. He had sutures and scissors and razors in his arm units. He had sanitizers and desterilizers and everything in his bat belt. He even had 3 different kinds of stitches he built himself, made of proteins and sugars that would help. If one, he had 3 different kinds. One was had carrot added to it for the livers. One had stomach lining added to it for the hearts and muscle stuff. And all of these not only disintegrated in the body completely, but were actually like self-sustaining medicine or vitamins for the body, helping it heal. He noticed one of the guys stood up, so he lifted his boot and dispensed sleeping gas out from the side, making the guy pass out. From the dispenser was attached to the boot itself, not the titanium shield he wears over his boot. He looked over, did stitched up the deep wounds, and swiped the back in reverse. By this time, he had heard the police sirens coming up. He jumped onto the wall and began leaping up until he got high enough that the sirens wouldn't notice him fly away. Then, using the hook shot, disappeared into the top of the roof where he leaped off, spread out for the squirrel suit to open, and glided away unknowingly by anyone. He was well prepared. He had his gift from Ra's al Ghul, the 3 claws. He had modified so that the inside was diamond edged. This allowed him to cut cords, but since the tips weren't, he could still hit people and not have to worry about slicing them or hurting them any other way. It was just a little on the inside that was diamond edge. By the time the cops got there, they were tied up, sutured, and ready for prison. This was how the Batman worked: silent, fast, and unstoppable. This was the 4th time Harley disappeared, and Joker wasn't amused. When he's in these moments of uncertainty, he constructs his circle of death. By ritual, it takes 16 hours for him to proceed to place all the weapons in their proper spots so that all of his toys are spread out. And at the end, he's in the center with one of the 3 possible weapons he needs to kill somebody with within an hour or so afterwards. Time moved slowly. He stirred in his skin. He took shot after shot, getting drunk while playing out the ritual as it was intended, as it was meant. He sent out everyone, and they came back empty-handed. Harley was gone. He laid in the center in the 16th hour with the 3 weapons he chose for the kill. He loved lying. He loved lying. He loved playing through the options. He was going to be simple or start a war and release one from the circle. So many to choose from. His high-pitched giggle as he rolled into a cuddle ball, then up into an Indian-style position. He took a huge swing of liquor, looked around at his large pitcher, He could put a grenade in a wine bottle so that when they pop the cork, they individually pull the pin and it explodes. He could set up rat traps and release the dogs. He had dozens of choices, but it turned the tides. His queen was gone. Someone is playing me. He stood up and popped his collar. Boys, we have a twist to unveil. To the cars! This was a truly rare occasion for the clown stampede. He filled up the weaponry. He filled up with his knives as they all got into their special clown Victorias, painted purple with green tops. They squealed out and began firing their machine guns in the air. They screeched all of them. They searched all of her Bowman's graveyard resting spots until finally he found her. Joker walked ever so slowly, so slow and quiet. You wouldn't even have noticed him if he walked past you. He held his hands in his dress coat pocket, pushed forward ahead of him, head down. The others surrounded the area, but stayed out of sight. Mr. J, he really hates you. Joker raised his head high to see what happened. It found, it found he hates you. He never looked at her, sprawled out on top of the broken cinder block wall. She laid there, never looking down, playing with her hands in the air as she laid. Her other one hung low over the side. Her knees stuck up and moved with her words. He knew this mode all too well. So I guess he knows your nervous system has solidified. Puddin', he's a mean man. Full-on tear clown. Yeah, I know the frowny one. Your mask and the... Harley, come here. She rolled off the wall and nearly belly-flopped to the rubble. She crawled to him, never raising up in her full jester attire. Did you do this with him? Grabbed her by the nose while he was looking down for tampering, looking to see if her beautiful jester outfit, her Harley Quinn outfit, was ripped. He let her go and didn't give her time to answer. This is what's bothered me the most. I can't help but admire the craftsman, but the balls you have to come after me. His room was set up like a theater. The bodies were all on stage. This was the mean clown. This was what it takes. All the people, the whole family, stood up like Hamlet. Then he turns to see their faces, splattered, cut off their face, and put on the seats like they're watching themselves doing the little dance. I'm blushing. The little tart's got a big rubbery one for the Joker, and his stuff's... Harley. Hum, 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 he giggled with a head wobble. I think this time for reality, for really speculative taping. In case he pulled out his cell phone, clicked the speed dial to number one. The entire gang, including Harley, raced to their phones, so rarely overwhelmed that she cartwheeled over, flipping towards him, screaming and laughing. "Oh, Puddin'!" Who moved to the side and let her crash into the ground face first. "Right," he spoke, placing his hands. "It's time for it." The night was dark, and they left the dilapidated, disgusting display of Shakespearean gore. "This is for the bats and the police to care about. Let them think it's me." The night was too dark. The streets were empty. You could hear the beat of the nightclub for miles around. Inside, the place was nearly abandoned. A few groups sat sipping their drinks. Harley and the Joker were the only ones on the dance floor. They danced for hours, allowing the mirrors and gold and diamond lace strings around them to flood their brain, allowing all of the heartache and turmoil to sink far into oblivion. A guy stood up and began dancing by himself in the far corner, away from the king and queen. Harley spun around, completely unaware. Rainbow lights flashed off the golden mirror decor. As she looked up, the look in her eyes said, "Where did you come from?" As her hand ran off the back of his head, grabbed his hair, and slammed his face into the glass over and over again as his limp body fell to the ground. She walked over to the Joker, smiled, reached down his pants, and pulled out the rusty ball-peen hammer from his garter belt strapped to his thigh. She continued with a Susie Q cutesy smile, with her hands on her chest, and with a spin, stood over the unconscious man, stood over him, knelt down, and began smacking holes into his soul. Raising her head and wiggled her fingers, she held it out towards the Joker. "See, Puddin'? Not a scratch." "Oh, you. Walking to her and knelt down. He bowed down, offering her a hand to raise. "Not a scratch," he whispered, backhanding her to the floor. "Not a scratch. Well, don't hold the halos and goodbyes," kicking her in the face as she rolled up to the seated position. The remaining people were terrified, staring up at the building that was crashing down around them. Joker's pants were rather tight, and as he put his hands down the back side, "Didn't I tell you? I used the hammer. I used the hammer." The rainbow flashes had become black, flashing like a strobe light of the emptiness of darkness. The crowd watched the Joker pull out a huge hook attached to a long chain. The illusion of slow motion broke as the end of the 10-foot chain fell to the ground and hit hard. The entire place smelt like ass, and they ran out as fast as they could. By the time Batman arrived, Harley was tied up around the neck with the hook bound to one of the bolted tables. holding her in the air. "Hi, Batsy. You really did it this time. Mr. J said since you blamed him for all that stuff he didn't even do, he said you owe him one or a few." "What do you mean?" Grabbing her by the arm, bringing him closer. She giggled. Well, Batman, I didn't know yous was into that big time fun." In quiet disgust, he released her, tied her up, carefully tied her up. "Carefully, Bats. If Puddin' learns you been doing me like this, he may fall off his rocker." He threw her over his shoulder. "Is this your professional opinion, Doctor?" "Oh, you's flatterer. You ain't getting anything out of me that easy. Maybe if you pick up the chain with the hook and put it in your mouth, you never know what'll wiggle out of me." The side of the Batmobile slammed closed. The front, next to the front wheels on either side, are detention cages. 2 cages so that he doesn't have to transport villains inside the Batmobile and learn anything about him. She batted her eyes to show her intensity, figuring she was on camera and being recorded. It didn't mean nothing to him either. Joker didn't tell her anything, or she would start from Arkham. Why else leave her for me? Batman got into the cage, got into the car, and said he didn't tell her anything. Maybe she'll start in Arkham. Why else would she leave her for me? Is there more of this connection than I know? Alfred, I want you to fly the Batwing over Arkham. If Harley moves, follow her. And if anyone else moves, put release the racer off of it and have them follow her as you hold position. The Batwing center was a bat hot rod that could be remote controlled both. I don't think we can trust the tracker this time. Something's up and we need to watch her live time. Alfred got to the remote control pad and began piloting him into position. The night was long and uneventful, the kind of long that makes you feel like you're behind bars and not in the cool kids group. Like every morning, the bustle starts early. Cars, then traffic, then the horde of people speeding to work or some coffee shop, donuts, and newspaper. Wow, wow, wow. As the sun rose, a vision was becoming clear. In the central square, eyes turned to an abandoned baby stroller. Wow, wow. A dual-seater. At this, everyone's hearts dropped. This city was always more to pile on. It always has more to pile on. They all wanted to look away so bad. Just close their eyes and forget it existed. But that was Gotham's problem. They either look away or be ran over by it. A lady was the first to peek in and found 2 babies tightly covered in their covers, the way a parent who loves them would do. Wah! She picked it up with the blanket and got a strange look on her face. It's a plastic kaboom! The baby doll had TNT crammed in its butt and a pull trigger. They were so close, the one ignited the other, and everyone in 20-foot radius was killed instantly, blown to pieces. Joker was never one for sneaking about, but between this new clown, and Batman tag teaming him, there was only one thing to do: break character and eat them both. He was the only clown in this town and could outkill anyone. Meanwhile, high in one of the dozens of skyscrapers, Joker was in full workhorse mode. He had a measuring tape and scissors, fabric all over the place, and an old xylophone playing a beautiful singing. The boom, all that was missing in this picturesque view. The sun brought a warm glow over the buildings below, through the huge open windows inside the air-conditioned 1,000-square-foot office. He cut and sewed and trimmed and cuffed. Joker was not only the big shot of fancy soap, but was the hidden partner of a multi-international fashion conglomerate. He even had his own private elevator, earning over, on average, $10 million a year. He grabbed his pair of binoculars and looked towards the bombing. Ah, too early for the bat. He is full of holes, isn't he? Then turned his attention towards Arkham. His eyes got so wide, reinforced. I must be loony. Pulling his necktie loose with the Rodney Dangerfield wow stick look. But it was. That fucking bat think Harley's in on it. And past his bedtime. If he thinks I'll let that little rugrat take control of my household, he hasn't met his siblings all over the town square. Joker reached into his pocket and pulled out a pile of cell phones, picked the one pink one, and sped dial number 9. It appears I'm not only the only one who needs to step up. Joker's men received the call and fell back. Number 9 is reconnaissance mode. What, you might ask? I wouldn't know. Think I'm fairly sure that his gang wouldn't know either. All they know for sure was that the mask could be off limits until they find whatever the Joker was looking for, without ever being told. 2 days passed, then 3. With the disappearance of the Joker gang and his queen in Arkham, it seemed that everyone was on the edge. Not a mugger, not a crime lord, not even any of the Gotham's infamous Catwoman, one of the famous residents, whatever. Catwoman was oh so happy to be home, looking at Gotham from the edge of the city, when cats ran out of everywhere, jumping in at her. What's got it into all of you? Meow. Austin will die. Catwoman lured close, working out the obscure dialect reference. The end has arrived? Meow. The cat bellowed up in a loud succession, pleading her to leave. Batman, driving the Bat Tank around, noticed even the Penguin had boarded up shop. Bruce hadn't slept in days, and was white-knuckling the steering wheel. His eyes were bloodshot, and his breath was ecstatic. Alfred's voice was giving him a headache. Finally agreed on the compromise that he would sleep in the tank if Alfred drove and monitored the Batwave. Fine, but I'm not waking you in case a red alarm alert. Only only for your favorites, or for only your favorites. We'll be leaving the retrobate and have we'll let Gordon deal with the rest. Capable hands. Bruce was already asleep. His mind found the darkness and silence. He slept like his parents were still alive. Not even the slaughter could break through this darkness. Alfred was half tempted to turn a car around. It would have a warm bath and hot meal waiting in his bedroom. He chuckled to himself. I would need to have a remote control button on his sleeping gas repository. It would be much safer for me. That is, because if he didn't wake up in the middle of the three, I'm screwed. The three, the bed, the food, and the hot bath. And possibly fired for a week or two like last time. The sleep had him. It was too late. Everything was over now. He sat trapped inside the endless darkness. A dark so deep it transformed time itself. The longer he slept, the further in time he went. Bruce opened his eyes. The Bat people were dancing on stage in slow motion. He was so cold. And Alfred, he couldn't stop shaking. The music was so loud. The orchestra wouldn't stop. So desolate. He wanted to crawl into his mother's arms. He tucked in close to the fur. It was so soft, so warm. He fell asleep. The Bat jolted up again. The people dancing on stage in bat suits flapped. The music cracked and clanged. He screamed, startled for waking up in the dream he had just woke up from. He tossed himself under the seat. A daydream that woke him in a new place, like he had gone through time. He was just a kid. This wasn't real. This isn't happening. Far into the future, the distant future where animals we love are becoming the next dinosaurs. It felt like he slept the whole trip, like he was trapped in 4,000 years. He couldn't shake it off. The music became bat voices. He was a kid hiding under the sheets of his bed, but can still hear the monsters in the room. He pleaded until they agreed to leave. He was right. The world had changed. Not an hour ago the theater was bustling cornucopia of lights and voices, but as they left, they found that people were not standing tall, were not well dressed anymore. They were not puffing their pipes or cigarettes. He hated the smell of the smoke, but the world he walked into seemed to inhale it. Everything became gray and was disguised. The lights were off. The people were scarce and afraid, creeping by, giving odd looks. The lights, the people, garbage blew by in the winter breeze. Bang, bang! It was happening again. If he wasn't so scared, maybe he would not have noticed. Maybe he could have warned them. Maybe he could have jumped in front of the gun and died with them. He watched the footsteps running away, then turned to look at his parents. They were both shot in the face. It was gone. Their faces were gone. No movement. Ah! He screamed, punching his father in the chest. His face slipped and disappeared. He lifted up. He found Mr. Freeze, lifted him into the air, and broke his back over his knee. Then followed with a stampede of punches that shattered the mask and collapsed his face. Then ran a penguin and Black Mask. They both snarled as he tore into him. Everyone tried to escape, but it was too late. They kept him from saving his parents. They kept his parents dead. Bruce heard the squeal from the bats, felt the mushy blood of the soaked floor under his boots, even seen the villain bad guys tore to pieces with the crime lords, everyone he knew dead around him by his own hands. The blood rolled off the hands. They were nothing more than rag dolls. Across the bloody dream. They were everywhere. He tore all of them. Batman awoke in the Batmobile, still being remote drove by Alfred from the Batcave. Alfred, bring me home. The depth of this night would hold him forever. He was the monster that killed them. It wasn't the Joker. He did this. He put them there. He had seen the pit of hell he had dug himself into. And for so many years, he barred it into obscurity. He felt like a total shit. He didn't even realize that he had killed them. But at last, the laughter was gone. The bat flew in quietly to Batman's waking eyes. Unfortunately for the rest of the city, wasn't having the same luck with these things, that the restaurant bars shut down with the penguin's bar shut down. The penguin had returned to the sewers. You could nearly say he was reverting to his feral form. A cute little piggy that runs away after a week or two without would turn into a big snarling, hairy, big-fanged pig you would never know was the same little pig. This turned him territorial and vicious. If you see Penguin, run. He's carrying all these same exchanges, except hair isn't filling in the spaces and fangs ain't forming out of his mouth. But his head is a complete mess. Penguin didn't belong in the sewers. Dreams of fish danced in his head like old cartoon movies. He's been eating rats since he's got down here. That wasn't even the same world. He wasn't the same penguin. Once upon a time, this freedom was heaven. He had all he needed. He had men, a war wrapped up in a beautiful Christmas box. This is what he was born from. This was not winter. This was hot summer ass. And he spent so many years confirming to the humanities that he was a worthwhile human, that he had lost everything from down here. The noise rustled inside of him. But wait, there it was again. Meow. A hungry, lost little kitty found him alone in these desperate sewers. Oh, you poor little thing. I bet you want a fish as bad as I do, huh, hun? Come here, little kitty. Let's catch rats together. He loved cats nearly as much as fish. Hiccup. pulling fur from his teeth. Bruce was on the seventh platform, the library storage platform. He had a hookshot disassembled on top of his high performance template. It basically tells Bruce everything down to how many screw turns all of his items have, a template for each. In this case, he had the hook shot out. How do you make one shot hook as good as the other? You go to the blueprints and find out that one's supposed to be 3, it was 3. That one's supposed to be 5, it was 5. This piece here at this angle. You go until you find where the discrepancy is and fix it before you put it back together. This was how Bruce found calmness. This was where he found his peace. He had diagrams for everything like that. He programmed the computer to be the same efficiency. 3D models that add situations on them so that when you come into it, it brings up the possibilities that were already preset. It makes a heavy effect. The ones on his bat belt use dimmer switches, principles with in and out buttons. As we already said, can adjust the dimmer switch just how far and how powerful. Meaning he can shoot 100 feet instead of 500, turning it and extending the arm into a battering ram. Master Wayne, I do wish you would be more careful. Bruce looked over to the Batwave platform where Alfred was putting his finger through the bullet hole in this cloth batsuit. Bruce smiled. The batsuit was predominantly black, with fireproof leather. The bat symbol, the hang glider cape, the squirrel suit wings, the gloves, the boots, even the outer underwear were all this fireproof black leather. But for the shirt and pants, he wanted it to just be simple cloth. He wanted anybody who touched him to know that I'm not afraid of your guns, your knives. The titanium spelunking harness was a great shield for backwards, and the metal iron mask and black arm things and shin guards, which the platform made the shin guards. It was extra. Were great for shielding from blades, so he really didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Well, you know I don't like showing weakness, Alfred, but here, I got a surprise for you. He put down the equipment, and with a few leaps from wall climb to platform to wall climb to platform, he was next to Alfred, holding a black suit. He carefully, be careful with that one, Alfred. I have to run a chemical analysis on that cloth suit. I don't need you to tamper with it. Now you know I prefer cloth, but you're sort of right. These bad guys are getting more creative, and in certain situations, Alfred looked down and seen the chemical stain near the bullet hole and placed it down. It, Bruce shook it off. Alfred, I didn't even bleed. It was not serious. But check this out. Bruce tossed him a new suit. It was made of diamond dust and coal dust. It deflects bullets and knife stabs. It's lightweight, but I don't think I like the idea of showing them I'm bulletproof. And it doesn't handle slices all too well. We don't need police cars getting hit with bullets, with iron-piercing bullets. Let alone here, once they find out what they start using anti-aircraft guns on us. He took the suit back after he put on the bat belt, this other bat belt, a new one he wasn't working on. My war can't endanger anyone. Landing on the museum training platform where he holds his extra uniforms. In light of the last few weeks, I think I need a strong test to check my cognitive reasoning. Sir, you're the only man in the world who needs drugs to prove he's not corrupted. He pulled out a needle of a case with some random drugs, one of 4 possibilities. Which one will you be using today, sir? He stuck himself in the arm and let it turn on. The test itself requires him to complete everything on the preset tables of each platform at least a 95% accuracy. Each table complicates. After each section is complete, he has to climb the walls to the next platform and then do the next table. The battering ray moving target gear pad and the test dummy track are his favorite ones, although the test dummy track in this situation is more used for lock picking and interrogation testing, since Alfred can now drive instead of him if he's under something too strong. Both of those have no tables, but only the target range is part of the test. Even the chemical nook is involved. That's a platform far away from the other platforms that is encased in a bubble. The only way to use it is to manipulate the 16 robot arms. This is the most dangerous platform in the next to the museum training platform. So that if a gas breaks in it, it'll hit the bubble and nothing will escape and they'll be able to vent it away. The museum training area is the second most dangerous. On it is 3 auto-avoid 12-gear transmission, truck-strong, sword-swinging robots. Eventually, after Grayson becomes the first Robin, they receive a full-sized, full-strength, full-speed Tyrannosaurus Rex that will perfectly finish this cave of his. But that means little now. The test is aimed, and the robots will block themselves from killing. They will never let, even if they will always avoid themselves, no matter how fast it's going. So Batman has to learn to dodge these 3 robots swinging these swords around him and not get touched. The test dummy course is designed not only to drive the Batmobiles and test them on a speed track, but he uses bricks and stacks up walls so that each one of them he can tell how far through how many bricks he can go through with how much damage. Like I said earlier, Bruce is big on knowing the contingencies. He wants to know how far past empty the car will drive and how long it takes to get there, the distance once it's empty. He needs to know everything about everything. That is the difference between Batman and a Robin. A Robin will give 130% to be good, to be best, to prove himself. But Batman does more than that. Batman wants to know every hole, every cage, every answer to every riddle, every question. The fact that he's a human helped it out a lot because humans can't fly either. So, in his quest to become the perfect Batman, he became as the perfect rat, squeezing through all the little holes of Gotham, climbing all the buildings, finding all the spots, learning all the secrets. He is the machine. He is the Batwave. The Batwave, just as a reminder for the future. Like the tractor beams on his boots and knees and on his fingers, so he can climb up the mountains without making him an old man. But now this means little. The test was ready and the drug was kicking in. 95% or he's bed rested. Worst of all of them, that even meant to the Joker's newest hopefuls. The family standing all huddled together, blindfolded. In their house, the Joker was in a good mood. Until the day you walked across fire, punch a shark in the face, and jump across rooftops. Have you really lived? Today I had such a great morning. I decided I'm going to give you all a great night. You're a family, and I've always been pro-family. I even have a little lady of my own. She was a bad girl, so I had to put her in time out. But I love her so much, I do. Please don't hurt my family. The dad pushed his family behind him, putting himself in between them and the voice. As he quivered, don't hurt them, don't hurt them, don't hurt them. What did I just say to you? You need to get your hair cut out of your ears. What did I say to you? What did I say? You're really messing up my day. His family didn't speak. I have this problem. A little man is coming into my home, and I think he can tell me how to and he thinks he can tell me how to act. Can you believe that? Me trying to tell me how to act. Well, I decided to do what I do, and you all can survive. They all started crying silently. Tonight, all you have to do is get through my maze. It's your home. Who knows your home better than you? Now, I've set up a path inside your house with 1,000 rat traps ready to pop. If you take off your shoes and walk in a line, you can hold each other, but can you can walk in a line, but you can't hold each other. Follow each other, but be careful. If any of the rat tracks pop, you may get bit by one of the dogs. I have my dogs spread out all over the place. 5 at least. You have until sunrise. Go. Don't make my dogs bark. The clown, on the other hand, held no mercy. Watching his family burn to death takes a lot out of you. He found the most populated alley, drew his katana, and ran them through. He was a monster. The homeless, malnourished, dehydrated, and drunk could not surpass the machine. They could not escape. Afterwards, he climbed into the rooftop and lit a cigarette. He wondered how long it would take for anyone to care. He took a drag. I wonder how long before they even notice. Even the guards at Arkham Asylum were on edge. They didn't like Harley Quinn being locked up by the Joker. It seemed like a psychological experiment being done on them. The Joker found a new way to torment them without even being in the same building. And she's been here for so long without even trying to break out. Kaboom! So the cinder blocks wall blew in and sent it at force everywhere. As a reinforced ice cream truck crashed in, sped up to Killer Croc's cell, and a group of clowns got out and began running around the truck as a clown tied a rope to the door to the truck. He slammed on the back like he was patting its butt, and the truck pulled the cell door off. The group instantly stopped running around the truck and charged into the cell. They all jumped back into the truck and carrying Croc. The guards realized the ice cream truck music was playing the whole time this was happening. They had watched the truck speed out the same wall. Not one fired a shot. The entire guard unit ran to Harley's cell, figuring she was the target. But they lifted their heads. They were gone. Harley stood at the window, angrily looking out, not pleased at all. Pulled out one of Joker's exploding marbles out of her ear. It wasn't even hiding, but how often does something get hid in plain sight? The guards shit their pants when Harley's door exploded from behind them as the truck was leaving. She made short use of them and angrily muttered to herself all night until she opened her duffel bag in one of her boneyards. Looking at herself in the mirror, she loved her suicide outfit so bad, as she called it, her baseball bat outfit, knowing that the Harley Quinn outfit was her sledgehammer mallet suit outfit. Back with the Joker, the struggling family heard an ice cream truck pull up to the house. Why not? This is at 3 a.m. Joker got bored, got into the back and left. There were no dogs ever since Harley arrived, or ever since they didn't listen to. Ever since Harley had arrived with the Joker, they didn't listen to him anymore. They only listened to Harley, so he couldn't bring them anywhere. He would tie her up for weeks for that one. He tied her up for weeks for that one. He loved those dogs, and they loved her. He smiled, thinking about memories, nodding his head to the jingle of the ice cream truck. Hey, he screamed, as only Joker can. Give me one of those Joker face ice creams on a stick. Killer Croc was set at ease, hearing his voice. He figured it was the Joker's goons, but he couldn't fathom going up against the Joker without an army of badasses backing him. As he thought about it, he wasn't followed. The clowns are already here, watching him. These were the first set of questions he would be faced with tonight. Gotham City, the land of smokestacks and nightmares. It's the perfect lie. During the day, you see beautiful architecture, clean stone walls, a city of the old world, a world not ensued in who's got the biggest dick, because here in Gotham, they'll cut it off and eat it. Endlessly people of the city every day. On average, 3.5 million people inhabit the city. 3.2 never leave. This has been Batman's biggest quandary yet. At night, the stones turn black. The architecture comes alive. The city of the 40s becomes a city of the Middle Ages, where all of the gargoyles break free and fly off the rooftops. Nobody would even care. It would just be Gotham. It would be in the news. Nobody would scream. The lights only shine shadows off the glass structures, and you'd pretty much pray for a moonlit night, or nothing was gonna see you. 20 years ago, Gotham Mayor instituted a curfew for all civilians. The empty streets became a breeding ground for all types of monsters that destroyed Bruce's life. The curfew lasted 4 years, and the consequences lasted forever. Even the new Batman, Terry McGinnis, 45 years later, is dealing with it. And it outlasted Grayson, Todd, Gordon, Drake, Kelly, even Allen and Fox. Most tried to fix Gotham, fixing the bigger country or the planet's problems, thinking that if they could fix that, they could fix the city. The city was too depressing. They had to leave. This was their excuse. These meant little to Bruce. Those were Robin problems and answers. He needed Arkham Asylum more than anything. This is why he kept sending him there. If they can break Mr. Freeze's syndrome or the Penguin syndrome, then they could heal everyone who had the same psychosis. Gotham was no different. If he could fix one city, you can fix them all. He looked and worked hard and long over these early years. He wasn't a shrink, so needed them. He was no Robin. Batman never lost his pursuit of answers. Learned early that observation was the key to his quest. The doctors do it, and the little Robins taught him this was right. He didn't watch how they ate. He would never have been able to eat the bird. It took a long time to finish the hidden cameras that all linked the person identifier, to watch 3.5 million people endlessly while giving everyone an accumulated condition monitor that jumped from red, yellow to green, while watching phone records and holding pictures of all your known acquaintances, so that the phones was the hard one and took longer than but with the vocal microphones attached to the cameras, it was. This allowed so that when somebody seen somebody and they called somebody to kidnap that somebody, Batman could have police waiting there for it when they come out of the building. Because if 5 people come in and only 4 of them look the same, you know who the 5th one is. It was a perfect tracking system and completely unmanned. He could program it to call the police itself. The cops would always be waiting. Unfortunately, Gotham's stink was thick, and it was really hard to maintain a big enough police force to catch them red-handed. The Joker's group is prime territory for fixing the system. They are your friends, your waiters. They are everyone you know. Then, on the drop of a dime, anywhere at any time, on goes the clown masks. These are the resident monsters of mayhem. They are the members of everywhere. With all the little bits of information they got from the Joker's favorite reptile, they got all they needed. They got their private investigators and their moles at the police office. They even got people at the Social Security office to begin scouring around the field to go back 50 years if they had to. Then, like all real life, they found him, the orphan boy who watched his family burn to death in a stream of fire of one of the Joker's games. The Joker laughed as he was reading it. He didn't even wake them. They just ran away. He just ran away afraid, and now he blames me. Oh, the poor boy. Overcoming his fear and framing the Joker. Oh, then, it's not fixing him. And he beat up the croc. Oh, he's got all the mustard of a mustache. That's the kind of bloke I love. He reached up and put his mask on. The crying mask, the mask he uses, and he put it on and turned to one with a sad look on the face. Boys, he fucked me. He fucked my girl. He even fucked my alligator. Find him for me. The streets were blocked of all forensics were on the streets were blocked. All the forensic vans were on the scene. Chief Gordon pulled up in the van, in the tan sedan. Yeah, he wanted to bait the Joker. It was all too easy. If the Joker came out of him, he would have him. He was a real ass over this hunting thing. Nothing would stop Gordon's path. Even Mr. Sincere Batman stepped in. Didn't he remember he was a family? No, shoulders. Didn't have the balls to tangle the family out of bounds. Gordon pulled up the handkerchief out of the pocket and put it up to his nose. He walked onto the scene that dreams start nightmares. Only Gotham can start this. Where they stood there in the alley looking at the 8 or 9 bodies with poles holding them up in a rushing opera ballet style. He could have hurled, but the old saying, if it takes the piss out of you, applies them. No, wait. Yes, Chief. They've been cut clean through, and the poles are shish kebabbing them. If the poles weren't there, they'd be in pieces on the ground. We can't find tire tracks, footprints, nothing. Only when the stores called about the smell did we find this. They're at least 3 days old. I felt it time we meet. Joker looked up and seen the dark silhouette looking down on him. Why do everyone who wants me hide in the shadows and play on rooftops? At least it feels good to see a clown up there for once. So, what are you trying to be? My unsatisfied subconscious? My need for an inner voice? The ghost of death? Joker looked back up, but he was already gone. Huh? I guess that's how most people feel dealing with me. Even the Batman can't help but disappear. The clown, on the other hand, had changed his channels. He had come to realize that he was crying this whole time and decided to do the right thing. At least the closest thing his mind could grasp as right. Joker was no longer his only target, the only and not the only option remaining. And there, as the Joker was talking, he had noticed a pretty kitty running across the rooftops. She never seen him coming, or hoped it was Batman. Catwoman was about to have a bad night. Her cats ran out from underwear to rescue her. Even mythological cats began revealing themselves this night. Cats that followed her in the shadows and were never seen. Cats of all the legends and all the missions and all the mysteries from history, crawling and biting, scratching at and mauling his face. His sword met its mark, and they retreated. They can't help if she can't wake. When she did, her hands and feet were tied in front of her as she hung from the ceiling face down. Perfect day for meow, don't you think? The clown was sharpening his katana and said nothing to her. What, hun? Cat got your tongue? He stood up and put the sword in its sheath and placed it on the table, whereby he beat the cat piss out of her with his bare fists, all while lecturing her on how much of a piece of shit her kind is. Meow. She smiled as her blood ran from out her mask. She noticed she was still wearing, and he didn't even try to take it off. Do you, Meow, have a name, Clowny? Or is it Joker Jr. now? Actually, I chose one recently. I'm Black Spider. Reached his fist back and got a batarang stabbed in it before he could swing the punch. He looked and seen the battering ring stuck right in his fucking forearm. Batman flew in and saved Catwoman. Black Spider was skilled, but not professional. He slammed him into the bat cage of the Batmobile and turned his attention to Miss Kyle. She was battered, with an unconscious but not permanently damaged. He took off her suit and put on fresh clothes and dropped her on the hospital anonymously. Lightning silently sprayed across the countryside. Hundreds of strokes, wind strong enough for a hurricane, flew everything in every direction. Joker stood there. Houses blew apart, lightning stretched trees, catching them on fire, and only silence. The world turned yellow. Like an old black and white movie. Then a shadowy figure appeared in the distance, walking towards him. She was just as unaffected by the world falling apart around as he was. She just held her pace, never flinched, walking closer to her. He did. He did, deep inside, miles and miles inside of one hair out of the 1,000, on one nerve out of the million. It shook. She blurred again. How she looked far away, even though she was nearly right on top of him. This was the feeling of that spit. Imagined it that time. He imagined it 1,000 plus 1,000 times bigger. Just that little shake, the first thing he's ever felt. That spit was so much bigger, huge in comparison. Fear, as small as the touch of the hair. As Harley's voice focused his face right on his, he looked down, found the knife she put in his gut, all big-eyed and shoutly. Yahtzee! He gave her a huge hug, hearing that come out of her voice. He didn't even feel a thing, except thinks she was there. It was easy enough with all the men, but if he got nothing from the dream, he got the most important thing he felt. Harley lost her nervous system in the toxin. He didn't have one to begin with, and has now been in the toxin twice. This put a clock inside of him. Harley will stay perfect forever, but he thinks he's on the verge of literally beginning to fall apart. Maybe weeks, days, years. Only death and the devil know how long. But if it was it, if he was finished, he decided to play his role as Batman's mind, a terrifying aspect to him. When an unmovable object faces unstoppable force, it either breaks through or ricochets. He used his men to sheep herd him to the roof. He didn't have time to play with this clown anymore. Batman was his target. He brought him to a roof that was close enough to the other one so that he would take the bait. Right above him the last time, right where he'll feel safe. The clown looked down and seen Joker on the ground below, and never noticed Harley walk up behind him with her baseball bat, with the good night side showing, and smack him in the back of the head. He fell off the roof. How do you know, Mr. J? How did you know? Mr. J, what would I want of your birthday? What else would you want on your birthday? What happens next is so gruesome. Him landing, but but, all said, he escapes. Joker got it so bad after this, he got a big hairy secret. He, he gave Harley twins, two girls they named Dee Dee, who would never stop calling her Nana Harley because how much she loved him and how much they thought it was so inappropriate. Batman gets a call from Miss Kyle. Batman gets a call from Miss Kyle. Patch it through. I hear you have a spider infection. Well, not anymore. He hurt a lot of my babies, and I just wanted you to know he's handled. In the end, Black Spider escapes from Catwoman also, and is not seen again until the movie Batman Assault on Arkham, Suicide Squad Part 3, since this is only after Part 2. The end.